All right, Hare Krishna, everybody. Valerie's here, Kelly's here, and Che Z. I'm Lakshmi Priya. I'm here with Anasuya Devidasi and Dhira Govinda. And we're hosting from Prabhupada's house, the first ever Q&A with Dhira Govinda. This gathering is due to people coming to Prabhupada's house and asking me all these questions, and I never feel qualified with the answers. So I got so many of it and so many similar questions that I decided to ask Dhira Govinda if he would do this program with us, which he volunteered to do graciously. And we received about 40 questions. So we've got quite a few questions for a 2-hour period. So we'll say that if you're interested in doing this again, or you have more questions than we get to today, we will accept those questions and forward them to Dhira Govinda, or you can direct email him with your questions. But you can also keep sending them to me, and then we'll see if we need to have another scheduled Q&A to finish up the questions. You're also welcome to ask questions about the questions as David answers them. So Anasuya is next to me, and she's going to give an intro for Dhira Govinda, and then we'll turn the camera to him, and then we'll chant 10 Maha Mantras together. And then he'll start the questions. And so Anasuya and I will ask the questions, and Dhira Govinda will answer them. And you're welcome to interject at any time by raising your hand or taking yourself off mute. Any questions so far? All right. Okay, I'll pass the camera over here. This is Anasuya.
Yes, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's really exciting to have Dhira Govinda, who also is known as Dr. David B. Wolf. And he is the author of Relationships That Work and The Power of Bhakti. And what I really like is there's a nice introduction. So we are recording this. We will be posting this on YouTube. And we do hope that others that may not even know about this being available tonight might stumble upon it and then understand some of the credentials of why we invited Dr. Wolf to be here with us this evening. So I'm going to take a moment to read at the back of the Power of Bhakti about the author. So David B. Wolf, PhD, has over 35 years of experience in diverse social and mental health service fields, including counselor training, crisis intervention, medical social work, children and family counseling, spiritual life coaching and developing, and leading personal transformation seminars. In 1998, he started the Association for the Protection of Children, APC, an international child protection agency, and served as director of the APC for 6 years. As part of his doctoral studies, he developed the Vedic Personality Inventory, VPI, a personality assessment tool based on Vedic psychology, and researched the effects of mantra meditation. He is a world leader in the field of mantra meditation research. In the 1990s, David Wolf began developing and conducting workshops and seminars on transformative communications, a communication-based approach to self-realization. These seminars became the foundational programs of Sabato Institute, a nonprofit organization based in North Florida, dedicated to educate people in transformative communication and principles of self-realization and spiritual empowerment, which David has co-directed with Marie Glasheen since 2003. In 2004, David established the Sabato Institute School of Transformative Coaching. David has conducted Sabato seminars in more than a dozen countries, including India, Russia, New Zealand, the Czech Republic, Guyana, and throughout the Western Europe and North America, and has coached and counseled thousands of people, groups, and organizations. He is the author of Relationships That Work, The Power of Conscious Living, and has been featured as a communication expert on media outlets such as Fox News and CNN News. Dr. Wolf has been practicing and teaching Bhakti Yoga around the world since the early 80s. He regards himself as an aspiring follower of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and is an avid reader of the books of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The accomplishment about which David feels most proud is that he has chanted at least 16 japa rounds per day since 1983 of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So that is quite powerful, and we feel why Dr. Wolf, Dhira Govinda, is very qualified to answer your questions this evening. Hare Krishna. Thank you for being here this evening.
Hare Krishna, thanks for inviting me. Hare Krishna.
We'll chant together.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Okay, we'll start with the first set of questions. Are you ready to go, David? Hi, everybody. Hi, Julia, Rukmini, Kanchamba, and Kelly, Valerie. All right, our first question is from Kelly, and Kelly's on screen. Welcome. Kelly and Julia's questions were similar, so they've been grouped together. So I'll start with Kelly's. What's the difference between religion and Krishna? Krishna says that when things get irreligious, that he comes. So do we need to be religious or just Krishna conscious? And Julia's question, similar, what's the purpose of Krishna consciousness?
Hare Krishna, thank you, Julia and Kelly, for your questions. So what I'll say in any sort of ordinary sense or conventional sense, this Krishna consciousness, Krishna Bhakti Yoga, it's not a religion. I've never been interested in religion in the ordinary sense. I remain not interested in religion. And I have, since this body is 62 years old now, so for like practically 50 years, I have been interested in, I'll call it like an experiential process, experiential learning. So Krishna consciousness, Pratyakshivagamam Dharmyam Shushukam Kartumavyam, that's a quote from Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says this process, it's directly experienced. It's not about joining anything. I've never been interested in joining anything. I've never been interested in trying to get someone else to join this club, be part of this group. Kind of like, yeah, I root for the Eagles, I root for the Giants, or tomorrow I'm going to root for the Cowboys. Okay, it's kind of like, I was a Buddhist, but now I'm a Christian, but I think I might turn into a Jew. Okay, so Krishna consciousness, it's a scientific process. It's a scientific process. Scientific means there's a consistent, rational philosophy, hypothesis that satisfies the intelligence. You don't need to trust me about that. You can study philosophy, ask questions, and see if anywhere in the world, in the universe, you find a more satisfying philosophy. And there's a process. Science means an experiment. There's a process we can do to experience the truths asserted in the philosophy. The process is called Bhakti Yoga. It's a technical term. And so it's a process through which, and I have I'm not advanced in the process. I do have enough experience the past 42 years or so to say the experiment works. It's a process. We give ourselves to the process, and we experience ourselves as not the body, as a blissful spirit soul. We experience our relationship with Source. A name for Source is Krishna. So it's a science of self-realization that moves, energizes, and supports us for the self to turn towards itself, to encounter ourselves honestly, to distinguish reality from illusion, and to turn towards Source, the divine, God, Krishna, in the spirit of devotion. So it's not about I believe, I don't believe. Now, yeah, I think your question, Kelly, you're referring to aspects of chapter 4 Bhagavad Gita. Krishna said, Yadaya dahi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhutanam dharmasya tadatmanam shujamyaham, whenever and wherever there's a decline in religious practice. So, okay, so if we get to the essence, even like linguistically, the essence of the word religion from the Latin, really the essence of the meaning is the same as yoga, just like yoga, like the English word to yoke means it comes from the Sanskrit yoga, to connect. So religion in the original Latin, that's what it means. The self connecting with itself, alive and honest self-realization, and connecting with God in a spirit of devotion. So what Krishna is saying in those verses, he's saying that, yeah, when the general mass of population tend to veer away from those principles and habits that support self-discovery and God consciousness and love for God, then Krishna appears in different forms. The main form in the current age that's most easy for us to connect with is connecting with divine through the names of God, like we just chanted, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is a mantra especially recommended for self-realization in this age. So if we get to the essence of religion, because Krishna says in his closing instruction in Bhagavad Gita, Sarvadaman parityagya mamekam sharanam braja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayashyami ma shucha. Krishna says, abandon religion. He's saying, abandon all material conceptions of religion, like what club do you belong to? Even what do you believe? And he said, and related to your question, Krishna says, just surrender unto me. Now that gets to the essence of actual religion. So that's where Bhagavad Gita ends. And the next book, Srimad Bhagavatam, it begins it in the same place. Dharma Pojitva Kotricha Paramonimat Saranam Satam Vejam Bastam Atravastu Shivdam Tapo Charmulanam. It says, completely rejecting all material concepts of religion. This Bhagavatam, it gives the highest truth. It gives self-realization. It gives love of God, which is the goal of actual religion. And so, and that's the purpose. That's the purpose of Krishna consciousness, to realize who we are and who we're not, to come out of illusion and to rejuvenate our original blissful, fully conscious nature in service to Source, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's the purpose. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Any questions? Okay. Hare Krishna. So the second set of questions, Stephanie, Ari, and Casey, were very similar, asking about chanting. So Stephanie's question was, how do I focus my consciousness during chanting? How do I stay dedicated to the process of daily chanting? Ari asked, why is it difficult to chant fast? And why does my mind wander while I'm chanting? Casey asked, how can we deepen our japa practice?
Okay. Hare Krishna, I appreciate these questions. Thank you, Casey, Ari, and Stephanie. I'm struggling with all those questions myself. No, I'm clear on the responses. I'm just saying, like, in my personal attempts at this practice called mantra mantra yoga, which is a cornerstone of Bhakti Yoga or Krishna consciousness. I've been practicing it for since the early 80s, well over 40 years. And so I certainly struggle with controlling my mind. I mean, what comes to me here? What comes to me here is that, yeah, the mind's like a sponge, right? The mind's like a sponge. And so if during the day or the night, if I'm exposing my mind, if like during the day or night, if I'm exposing my mind to things that are material and things that alienate me from me, and in things that are just all these topics of the drama of material life. Okay, then when it comes time to chant, well, that's where my mind will go, and then like, oh, focus on these divine vibrations. And just like, oh, but I'm thinking about the football game. I'm thinking about the political article I just read. I'm thinking about, that's where my mind goes. Just in the recent enlightenment program, just 2 weeks ago or something, we read this verse, Bandorat Matmanastasya Inamivat Manastashatruve Vortedat Medvasatruvat, that the mind can be the best friend or the worst enemy. So material conditioned life means we've trained our mind to be our worst enemy, to take us away from our actual joy, our actual bliss of self-realization, of God consciousness, of connection with Krishna. And so it means to train the mind and to discipline the mind. And that's like, so I know, like, let's say if the night before reading Krishna book, I'm reading Srimad Bhagavatam, I'm absorbed in hearing Prabhupada. In the morning when I get up, hearing Srila Prabhupada, I like to do some spiritual reading before japa. We do, or Samsara Dava, we do the auspicious Mangalarti before japa. Okay, then we might use the example, like if we got a 16-track mind, okay, let's do our best to put Krishna in some form on each of the tracks. So even if my mind wanders, oh, it's something transcendental. So now, of course, for like a pure loving devotee of Krishna, in a sense, it doesn't matter what time of the day they're chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra Japa, because it's just pure transcendence of the modes of nature. Most or all of us, we're struggling with the material modes of nature. That's why morning time is especially recommended, especially those pre-dawn hours. It's, for most of us, it's easier for the mind, consciousness, and power of hearing to focus on the mantra yoga, the mantra meditation in the early morning hours. So I like to chant my japa early morning hours. And if we don't, then okay, it's 2 PM, 7 at night. Okay, and this relates to some of the questions here from Stephanie, Ari, and Casey. So, of course, the ultimate goal or purpose is not about chanting fast or slow. The goal is to chant with attentiveness with full heart and consciousness, with a mood. Please, Krishna, engage me in your service. We can say the chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. It's a prayer, and it's the answer to a prayer, right? The essence of the meaning of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is, please God, please Krishna, engage me in your service. And the foundational service we get to do is to chant the names of Krishna. So it's a prayer, and it's the answer to the prayer. And so, for myself, if I'm chanting particularly slow, it's probably because I'm in maybe some tamas, some lazy mode, and just giving my mind space to wander here and there. And then if I'm chanting, like, I'll call it too fast, and there's not like a formula for that. Some chanters of the Maha Mantra, their natural speed is 5.5, 6 minutes per round. For some, it might be 10, 12 minutes. So there's not a formula. I know for myself, if I'm chanting more than 8.5 minutes around, it's probably a sign I'm just letting my mind wander. and at the same time chanting very fast, then am I pronouncing each syllable? Because each syllable is a name for Krishna and Radharani. Am I really hearing each syllable? Or am I just trying to rush and get it done with? So that's like, it's like a balance. And, I know for me, it helps while chanting to be listening to Srila Prabhupada chant, listening to that pure chanting. These are some things that are helpful for me. I would say often, if I look over the years and decades, my best, relatively most attentive chanting is when I'm like sitting and focusing, maybe focusing on a form of Krishna, maybe hearing Prabhupada. At the same time, I'm just sharing personal experience. And there's one course, I haven't taken it, but I've heard very powerful things about it. It's an online course on chanting japa attentively. It's offered by Madhu Pandit Das Prabhu. He's based in Bangalore. So I've heard very good things about it from members of the Safatov community. Yeah, so at the same time, when I'm sitting and chanting, then sometimes I get drowsy. So then that's not good for attentiveness. So then sometimes I like to walk and chant. Walking and chanting, then I'm awake. At the same time, sometimes I can get distracted. Oh, what's that sign say? Oh, look at the cute little doggy. Nothing wrong with cute little doggies. But yeah, like that sort of thing. Okay. And then as far as how do I stay dedicated to the process of daily chanting? Yeah, this whole thing of attentive chanting, daily chanting, that relates to making it important, just like making it important. That's it. Because if some days I don't chant whatever 16 rounds, or as you read in my biography, the accomplishment I feel most satisfied with in my life is for about 40 years now, I've fulfilled that vow to chant at least 16 rounds of Hare Krishna mantra per day. But as if we're not chanting, we can say I love Krishna, like that. Okay, so, well, I didn't spend any time chanting his names today, but I just love Krishna. Okay, maybe, who am I to say no? But basically Krishna, through the Vedas, through Srila Prabhupada, he's saying okay, if you love me, you serve me. And here's the foundational way to serve me. Satatam kirtyantamam yatantastra dritavrata namasyantastamam bhaktya nityayuktu pasate. Krishna says, Satatam, to do kirtan, chant my names all the time. So as far as this vow, whether your vow is 1 round per day, 2 rounds per day, 16, 20, 21, 25, Srila Prabhupada says if you have a taste, you don't need a vow. We do this because we're asking Prabhupada, sometimes 16 rounds, it's hard, it's heavy. So Prabhupada said, why 16? Why not 16,000 rounds? Meaning if we have a taste, then just I don't want it to end. There won't be, I don't want it to end. I want to go on chanting Krishna's names, Hare Krishna. But because we don't have a taste, so therefore we're using the structure of commitment. We use the structure of commitment. And then, okay, at least I'll chant 16 rounds. And from that dedication to quantity, quality naturally comes. Quality comes from quantity. And so it's just like anything, right? Let's say someone wants to become, if someone wants to become an expert piano player, and they go, yeah, I'm going to sit down at the piano when I feel like it. That's okay. It's not bad. And you might come out with some beautiful something once in a while. But it's come on, if you're dedicated, instead of partying tonight, and instead of staying up till 2 a.m. for that conversation, no, I'm going to spend 2 hours practicing the chords, the harmonies, the progressions. I'm going to spend 2 hours rigorously. Tomorrow I'm going to spend 4 hours. Oh, then a year from now, yeah, this is powerful. If we want to become expert in anything, so it requires making it important. And let's say maybe we made a commitment, and it's nighttime, and we're tired, and it's okay, well, to fulfill my commitment of 16 rounds, I've chanted 11. Okay. I'm making this more important than sleep. I'm making this more important than eating. It means making Krishna important. And it's not like you should, just if we want the results of that transformation of heart. And it's good. Like if I chant Hare Krishna when I feel like it, when I'm inspired, that's wonderful. And if we want to progress solidly, that requires like, I'm making this important. It means like, I'm doing it, including, especially when my mind and senses don't feel it. And then the soul is happy. The soul is happy. And, okay. Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna.
I just have one little question to add on to that. I know you said there's no formula, but everybody has advice and shares what works for them.
Yeah.
Is there a volume if there's no inhibitions, we're not in a restaurant or trying to finish our rounds with somebody in the car who doesn't chant or whatever. But if we're just chanting with ourselves in the room, in the temple room or in our bedroom, or wherever we do it, is there any advice on how much enunciation or volume there should be? Or is it just do it how you do it, whatever works for you?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Lakshmi Priya. I would say both, all, like that. So there's not a formula, but Prabhupada gives guidelines. So in some purport, Chaitanya Charitamrita said we should chant loud. It's in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Okay. And the idea is like, what's going to support us best? To be focused on the sound vibration of each word of the mantra. For sure, we're recommended chant, enunciate, so we hear each syllable of the mantra. And it could, and at least for a japa, to chant at least loud enough for ourselves to hear. And let's say if someone is 3 or 4 feet in front of us, at least loud enough that they would hear. At the same time, the principle is like, if I'm chanting loud, Hare Krishna, then it's more because we talked about like a 16-track mind or a 2,000-track mind, right? My mind goes all over the place. So if I'm chanting with more volume, then like it grabs my mind more, and then I'm more absorbed in the service. At the same time, if like, shouting, yelling, Hare Krishna, that's disturbing. So if for some people chanting, relatively softly, that's what enhances the meditation. That's the key thing. Now, even if someone chants silently, then we're absorbed in the mantra. The key is absorption. But for the japa rounds, that we count as our japa rounds for a day, it's recommended to chant at least loud enough for ourselves and someone who is close enough to hear. Okay.
I was just going to share that. I know when I first made the vow to do my 16 rounds of chanting, I came to you because I love singing the Maha Mantra. And I was like, but I'm doing like several hours during the day of singing, but it's not 16 rounds. And so I had to make a decision on how to make my commitment to Prabhupada.
Yeah.
And so what I finally realized, and you didn't tell me this, I just came to the realization because I was being sincere and I wanted to make that commitment by a certain time frame before taking initiation. So I came to the aha moment of I get to chant my rounds so that I get to then do my singing. So it's also, I feel like sometimes when I chant my japa, it's some version of singing sometimes. And then it's also like, very joyous. And so I just wanted to share that because I was equating time with completing 16 rounds of japa, not actually counting until I became sincere in that. And I like how you said that that's not serving Krishna is by following those guidelines that Prabhupada gave us.
Thank you, Anastasia. I think Jim's not on mute.
Sorry.
I don't know how to put someone.
Okay, Jim, are you available to put your
I'll put it on mute. Yeah.
Jim?
Hey, Jim.
Hi, Krishna.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Anastasia. I appreciate very much your personal process. I remember that about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very inspiring. You got the realization. It was between you, Krishna, Super Soul, and Prabhupada. Thanks for sharing that. Hare Krishna. There's so many wonderful questions. I doubt we'll get to all of them in our next 90 minutes.
We're playing.
But I want to say right now, because someone's question, I think it was Julia's, was, well, when we don't have these questionnaire answer format, what do we do? So I just want to say, myself, David Wolf, also known as Dhira Govinda Das, and Marie Glasheen, also known as Malini Devi Dasi, we're available. Some of you know me. Some of you know me that like kind of whatever I have, I can have a full day, full week, full schedule. I'm traveling, this and that. But if someone writes me like a philosophical question about the philosophy and practice of Krishna consciousness, I'm just like, ooh, I need to clear time. I need to clear time to respond to that. Some of you know, like that. So we're available. We're available. And even some of the questions we might not get to tonight, write me an email. I'll respond. So we'll know.
Plus, we'd like to maybe do this quarterly. So who knows? I mean, there might be, opportunity to continue.
Our next question is from Valerie.
Valerie,
She's still there. Hey, Valerie. Hare Krishna. I have to say that Valerie gave me a lot to work with here. We had a long discussion, and then we discerned the questions out of the discussion, and it was a lot of fun getting to the bottom of what the question actually was. So thank you for that time, Valerie. Does Krishna judge me when I have road rage or say judgmental things to others, or when my practice is not what it could be or should be?
thanks for your question, Valerie. Thank you, Valerie. Krishna, and for those who might not be, Krishna is a name. There's one. This is monotheistic. One God. God has many names. Krishna is a name for the Supreme Person. So Krishna is all loving, and he's always loving us, and he's always loving us. So he's not like materially judging us or something like that. So he's always loving us unconditionally. He's always mercy. He's loving us unconditionally. Because sometimes we hear, someone here is like, well, I'm not going to chant rounds, or I'm not going to follow this principle because God will love me anyway. We hear that. So it's like, well, okay, yeah, that's not really the question, whether God will love us anyway. The question is, what am I doing to show my love for Krishna? Yeah, I mean, I can act in the most horrendous ways. Krishna's still going to love me. And it's Krishna going to give me he's going to give me unlimited chances. But that's not the question. The question is, what am I doing to cultivate my devotion to Krishna? So I'm going to give that, like that. And so now also, just like, okay, let's take the example of a parent and children. So no matter what the children do, the parents love them. Right? Because at the same time, is it like, okay, child, son, daughter, whatever you do, you can do this destructive thing, you can be nice and cooperative, you can whatever you do, I like equally. No, that's not true, right? So the parents are always loving the child, but there's some things the child does that are pleasing to mom and dad. And there's some things the child does that are not pleasing, right? And the things that are not pleasing, it's not even like, because we know, like, if you act that way, like you're just ripping up the book, that's not going to serve you in life. That's not going to serve you in life, right? So there's some things. So like when we notice, as your question says, that we let anger control us. That's a verse from 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna describes psychology, right? When we contemplate the objects of the senses, we develop an attachment. And then from that attachment comes lust, and from lust comes anger, and it's a downward cycle. All right, so I notice. So we're all like, oh yeah, my lust and anger. All right, but now, okay, now, so Krishna's, he's not like, oh, you're doomed to hell forever. At the same time, oh yeah, then we lost our, I took out my unhealed wounds on someone else and they didn't deserve it. Maybe it's my child or something like that. Okay, they didn't deserve it. All right, so it's not like Krishna's judging us. At the same time, Krishna's wanting us like, okay, what do I learn from that? How will I process in a way where I'm going to be more sattvic and more godly from now on?
Mm.
And then in that way, we get to please Krishna more. Thank you, Valerie.
All right. We have our question next from Rachel. If our bodies feel pain and pleasure, why does Bhakti ask us to be void of our pleasure senses?
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for the question. No, Bhakti does not ask us to be void. This Bhakti, Krishna consciousness, it's a very world embracing process. It's not a world rejecting process. Actually, on the way here from Alachua to Melrose, I was listening to a lecture of Prabhupada. And I'll just say that that's the thing, because like, as far as being able to control our mind while chanting, which I'm no expert at, but the more I listen to Prabhupada, even not just while chanting, like I could have listened to some pop song on the radio in the 45-minute drive here. I could listen, to the news, and maybe there's a time to listen to the news. I'm not saying no, but I listen to Prabhupada. All right. So then, now I got some Krishna consciousness. So I got some connection there. Then that helps me when I'm chanting because I'm hearing Prabhupada. Yeah. So I just listened to Prabhupada on the way. He was reciting a verse from Srila Rupa Goswami from Nectar of Devotion. Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatar Ham Ubinjata Yabanda Krishna Samade Yuktam Vairagam Yuchate. And that verse says, Krishna consciousness, we don't reject anything, but it's about dovetailing, right? My understanding is that, after a question and answer, and before I get in my car, I'm going to get some prasadam pizza.
Yes.
Okay.
Jai.
Yeah. See? Yeah, you're all online. You don't get the pizza. Right.
Or the leftover too.
Yeah. So, okay. So no, what? But I'm going to be spiritual, so I'm going to avoid my senses. No. Krishna consciousness is about enjoying pizza. Okay. but with the commitment that, like naturally we have a tongue, we have a belly, we want to enjoy, and let's do it in Krishna consciousness. And that way the eating process spiritualizes our whole body, right? So it's like Krishna consciousness, right? It's not like, well, we're spiritual, we don't dance. No, you all know, like dance wildly, ecstatically in kirtan. So it's dancing for the pleasure of Krishna. And even I'm thinking of like in the Old Testament, if you hear about David HaMelech, King David from the Old Testament, his son Solomon established the temple, or the next king Solomon, right? So it describes that King David dressed in Hare Krishna type dhoti, and he was just going around Jerusalem with the tzitzilin, which essentially are kartals, and the drums and the trumpets, and he had his entourage and his friends. They were just dancing wildly in ecstasy of God, right? So it's about learning. It's about being sincere to learn the art and science, how to use our bodily senses, our arms, our legs, our tongue, our eyes, our intellect, how to use the bodily senses in Krishna consciousness. Then not only so-called materially are we satisfied, but then the soul satisfied. So this is not a process of rejection. Prapanchikataya buddhya hari sambadi vastuna mumukshu bi priyago pagu vairagam katyate. What that says is like, that's an incomplete sense of renunciation, like to just reject everything. The example given by Prabhupada, like if we find a wallet on the street and there's $800 in the wallet. So materialistic mentality is like, okay, these credit cards, this 800, this is mine to enjoy. Now, higher than that, but still incomplete, is this is not my wallet. I will just leave it here. It's not for me. But the highest, where we feel most in integrity, is like, this is not my wallet. This is not my $800. These are not my credit cards. It's not for me to enjoy. But it is for someone to enjoy. Let's find the owner and return it to the owner. Then we feel really in integrity and like that. We feel really rich and in integrity. So similarly, so this body, this is for Krishna's enjoyment. Let me use these hands and this tongue, just like right now we're speaking. And like, no, to be spiritual, we should be silent. When we find Krishna consciousness, speaking really begins, eating really begins, communication really begins, dancing really begins, communication really begins. Using our psychophysical nature to fulfill our occupation, learning the art and science how to do that in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, so that's fully satisfying. Otherwise, Krishna says to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, don't be a pretender. What can repression accomplish? He says to Arjuna, you don't want to fight, you want to run to the forest. Here's the thing, according to your nature, according to your body, according to your body, you're going to fight anyway. Even if you go to the forest, you'll find some sages and you'll fight off the tigers or the criminals like that. You're going to fight. So why not fight for Krishna? Use everything in Krishna's service. It's a very world embracing process. Nothing's rejected. It's just about learning the art and science how to do that. Hare Krishna.
Our next question is from Rachel. And there's a couple of parts from Rachel, and then Casey also has something on this topic. So Rachel's questions are, how can we hear Krishna? How can I hear Krishna and know that he's guiding me? And what does it mean to feel surrender or be surrendered? And then Casey's question is, how involved is Krishna in our lives?
Okay. Thanks for those questions, Casey and Rachel. Thank you. Yeah. So this very personal process, right? Like the source has impersonal aspect, and ultimately that you might say the most complete realization of the absolute is the personal aspect, Sri Krishna, personality of Godhead. And so Krishna gets personally involved. The more we get personally involved, Krishna, I'm giving myself personally, heart and soul, to serve your mission. Then Krishna gets personally involved. Krishna, I'm dedicating myself today to know you. Like there's the George Harrison song, My Sweet Lord, I really want to know you. I really want to love you. I really want to serve you. So when that's, when it's less and less just a game, or that's how I should say, but like from our heart, we get personally involved. We take one step, get personally involved. Krishna comes towards us 100 miles, gets personally involved in our lives. And to the extent that we're not personally involved in Krishna consciousness, then it's like mechanical. Then we're under the yantra udani mayaya, then like the machine made of material energy, material time, material karma. Then we're still under Krishna's energy, but in that mechanical energy. Krishna says, everyone's following my path, just like, let's say someone is following the laws of the government, and then they're naturally free to live their life creatively. Okay, and so they have a relation with the king and the queen, and very free, personal like that. But then if someone says that, well, I'm going to use my independence to break the law, to violate people's rights, maybe to kill people. So they'll still relate to the government, but under the prison system. Like they've lost the opportunity for that very personal, sweet relationship with the king and the queen. And then it's the guards and the prisons, and you got half an hour in the exercise yard like that. And so, yeah. So I don't know Krishna. So why are you asking me about Krishna? So I know how to please Krishna through my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. Okay, Prabhupada knows Krishna. And so we're pleasing Prabhupada, we're pleasing Krishna. We're surrendered to Prabhupada, we're surrendered to Krishna. Krishna says, that's the system Krishna sets up. Krishna has verses. He says, one who thinks himself my devotee is not my devotee. One who sees himself as the servant of my devotee, he's my devotee. So I endeavor to serve Prabhupada. And to the extent that Prabhupada's pleased, then I know that Krishna is pleased. And so Prabhupada guides me in how to please Krishna. As far as how to please Prabhupada, how to serve Prabhupada, there doesn't need to be any mystery about that. Doesn't need to be any mystery. He makes it clear. He makes it clear. You want to progress in this bhakti, in this Krishna consciousness. I'm not going to go, but then here's ways, and there's no force. Just like you were sharing your process on this, you came to realization how to chant, how to adjust your chanting in a way that's fully aligned with Prabhupada's guidance. Krishna said, Prabhupada emphasizes it again and again. Krishna consciousness is voluntary. Once there's force, there's no love. It's voluntary. And Prabhupada says, okay, you want to progress in this process? You want to please Krishna? Okay, here's some guidelines you can follow in relation to your eating, in relation to your relationship with early morning hours, in relation to chanting the names of God, in relation to these regulative principles. Here's dozens and hundreds and thousands of ways you can serve my movement. Right? If we want to serve Prabhupada, he makes it very clear how to do that. And then we please Prabhupada, we're pleasing Krishna guaranteed. Hare Krishna.
Okay, our next question is from Rachel. How can we pray to Krishna like adults instead of praying to Krishna like children?
Okay. Well, thank you, Rachel. Thanks for that question. I'm just conjecturing what your meaning is, but it's a beautiful question to contemplate. Of course, in a quality of a Krishna conscious person is that they are childlike. And of course, there's a distinction between childlike and childish. So many who encountered Prabhupada, they describe him as just like this childlike innocence, who could be soft as a rose and strong as a thunderbolt, like that. So as far as prayer, I appreciate the question. Well, of course, we can pray spontaneously from our heart. We don't pray to Krishna. Krishna, please engage me in your service. The Maha Mantra, it's a prayer. Please engage me in your service. So here's another idea. And, we can, to pray like adults, we can absorb ourselves in the prayers of fully realized devotees, like Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, chapter 11, Param Dhamma, Param Brahma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavam. Chapter 10, chapter 11, Arjuna has these ecstatic, powerful prayers to Krishna. Chapter 8 of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's like a whole chapter, dozens of prayers by Queen Kunti. She's pure devotee. So Arjuna, they are mature devotees, so absorbers. Even we can read them. Maybe we want to memorize some of the English and Sanskrit of those prayers. Prahlad Maharaja's prayers. Of course, he's in a child's body. He's a fully mature, pure devotee. There's just hundreds of prayers from mature devotees all over Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Arjuna, and Bhagavad Gita. So maybe absorb ourselves in that mood, maybe even use our power of memory. Some of you know this verse maybe from some Safato program. This is from Queen Kunti, eighth chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Janmeshvara Shrutashubir Edamanamada Puman Naivarahat Yabidatum Vai Tama Kinshana Gochara. She says to Krishna, oh Krishna, those who have a lot of riches and a lot of physical beauty and a lot of education and aristocratic birth, for them it's difficult to feelingly call out to you, oh Govinda, because we can get too comfortable. Oh, material life's going pretty well. So it's a prayer from Queen Kunti. So absorb yourself in the prayers of that are there in the Bhagavatam, Shukadev Goswami, Sutta Goswami, Bali Maharaj, on and on and on. Hari, thanks for the question.
Okay, our next set of questions is from Rachel and Julia concerning Prabhupada. Rachel asked, how do we know that Prabhupada's mission was clean, clear, and pure? And Julia asked, why is Prabhupada worshipped? Question.
Thank you. Thanks for your questions. Well, how do we know gets into the question of how does anyone know anything? You know, there's different systems and processes for knowing. It's that philosophical department's called epistemology. We won't go too much into that here. There are different epistemologies, both in modern empirical philosophy and science. In the Vedas, there are 10 types of epistemologies, ways of knowing. Prabhupada sometimes collapses them into 3, which umbrella the other 7. Okay, we'll go to that. I'll speak personally. So, yeah, just like, okay, the more I hear and read about Prabhupada's life and character, the more I study his teachings, the more it's clear to me, the spirit soul, like, this is a completely pure personality. I'm speaking personally. You know, I could get into, like, again, scientific ways of knowing. I don't know if we'll clear time for that tonight. I'm speaking for me personally. And so it's just like, this person, Srila Prabhupada, just like, the only thing that's there is Krishna, right? Just like, you know, they can listen to his conversations, his thousands of letters, his lectures. It's just like he just wants to give us Krishna. He just wants to give, there's nothing else there. And that there's no greed, no lust, no envy, no jealousy, no laziness. He's just like 100% just wanting to give us Krishna. So I've been 100% convinced of that for a long, long time. But you might say, like, each day, each year, like, I'm more and more deeply realized in that. And Krishna, love of Krishna is the goal of the Vedas. Prabhupada's just absorbed there. He's just absorbed there. And so, well, a story maybe some of you have heard me tell, because I told it in a few classes here and there. Let's just look at David Wolf. Okay, so recently this body turned 62 years old. So let's say me in my mid-teens, 14, 15 years old, 1975, mid-1970s. Okay, and there I was in Northeast Philadelphia. Okay, in my mid-teens. All right. So, and I had no particular interest in yoga or India or God. I definitely wasn't interested in God or even spirituality. Like, no. Okay, I was interested, in other things that, like, your typical teenager in mid-70s and, in suburban America. So, but if you were to ask me then, oh, have you ever heard of, different so-called gurus of that time? Have you ever heard of Guru Maharaji? Oh yeah, I heard of that. I heard of that guy. Have you ever heard of Rajneesh? Oh yeah, I heard of him. Have you ever heard of Maharishi? Yeah, I heard of him. I'm not him, but yeah, I heard of him, sure. If you ask me, have you ever heard of Hare Krishna? Oh yeah, I've heard Hare Krishna. Now, if you ask 14, 15-year-old David Wolf, have you ever heard of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada? I would have said, no, never heard of him. Never heard of him. So I'm saying that because, like the others, their intention was that they would be known even by someone who's not interested in these things, like David Wolf at 15 years old. And Prabhupada's intention wasn't that he'd be known. Right? So, like, there's no desire for fame or aggrandizement or or adoration or distinction. He just wants Krishna to be known all over the world, and he's successful. That's why even like in every town and village, people have heard of Krishna, and that's because of Prabhupada, because that's his goal. That's all he wants to give us. Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, I regard my mission, which I make meager attempts at fulfilling my mission. My mission is that people know about Prabhupada. I hope that's coming through. I hope that's coming through here in our first 45 minutes. And that's my mission. But Prabhupada's mission, just to give us Krishna. And so, the question about worship, it's a fine question, right? Because if we're worshiping, so God completely pure should be worshipped, served, worshiped. And if we're worshiping like anyone with any even tinge of material desire, first of all, our nature is to worship. We're going to worship. We're going to serve. We're going to honor. We're going to applaud great personalities. We're going to do it. And if we look at our lives, we've done it. The question is, how and where are we going to direct that propensity? Are we going to direct it towards the movie star, the rock and roll star, the political person, the sports, like that? We're going to sing the glories of someone or some group or like that, the political party or. Okay, so that propensity is purified when we direct it towards God and God's pure devotees. And if we direct it towards anyone that has any even tinge of material desire, like even someone's enjoying being praised, or someone wants to be adored, or the need to be needed, what to speak of gross material desire, just lust, greed, envy, deception, laziness, just the gross stuff. Then we're doing what's called in the Bible, that's idol worship. That's idol worship. That's idol worship. Yeah, if we're worshiping, serving anyone with any material tinge. So we come to Krishna through Krishna's pure devotee. Okay, now I say without any doubt, Prabhupada's a pure devotee of Krishna. Krishna is very happy when we come to him. And so we please Krishna when we go through the pure devotee. And in worshiping Prabhupada, we know like he's not taking any for himself, his own enjoyment, his own sense of material ego. He's just giving it to Krishna. And so we worship Prabhupada, we serve Prabhupada, we offer flowers to Prabhupada, we dedicate ourselves to Prabhupada's mission, and we purify our own hearts. And again, if we direct that propensity for service, honor, worship to anyone with any tinge of material consciousness or desire, then it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment. And then that's idol worship. That's the golden calf line of disciplic succession. And it's a great question because sometimes, Krishna, yes, Krishna, or whatever. But Prabhupada's close because I know to honor Prabhupada, to bow down to Prabhupada. It's true. I need to look at and rise beyond the envy in my own heart. Like, I don't want to bow down to anyone like that. But to bow down to God and his truly pure representative, like Jesus or Prabhupada, that's recommended if we want to cleanse our hearts. Thanks for your questions.
All right, our next question is from Rachel. Would you please discuss the use of dairy in Bhakti life?
Dairy, okay, yeah. So Krishna is a cowherd boy. So the creator of all the universes and the planets, and he likes to enjoy as a cowherd boy. So Krishna has a special fondness for cows. And so Krishna appreciates when we offer him dairy products with love and devotion. So that's prasad. It's how we engage our tongue and belly in devotional service. And so Krishna likes dairy products. So that's how we do it. Now, I understand in the current day and age, all over the world practically, not everywhere, but almost all over the world, that, like to get the dairy, there's a lot of the violence to the animals. So we don't want to contribute to the violence. It's kind of like, it's a related, but it's another discussion. Okay. And so that's why some people choose, well, I'm vegetarian, but I'm vegan, like that, because I don't want to contribute to that. And okay, like for sure, we honor that, and because we don't want to contribute to violence to the animals. Of course, I just for consideration, someone could say, well, the spirit soul in the cow's body, their milk gets offered to Krishna, and then that soul, that's for the absolute spiritual good of that soul, and then that soul is accelerated on their sojourn towards liberation, like that. So that's just an argument, but I understand, like there's so much in the dairy farms and so much mistreatment of the animals, and someone doesn't want to contribute to that, so they choose not to do there. But the Prabhupada will sometimes say, we're not, it's like he would sometimes say there's nothing special about vegetarian. And sometimes he would, it's a sattvic diet, but he say, because he said, we're not vegetarian, we're prashadarians. We're prashadarians. And of course, Krishna, he doesn't want meat, fish, eggs, like that. So Krishna does accept dairy. Now, of course, and some, myself, and there some they'll consume dairy prasad, but only from farms where the cows are protected. The cows are raised in Krishna consciousness, or at least the cows aren't sent to the slaughterhouse. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, our next set of questions are multiple questions from Julia.
Okay.
Julia, you still there? Yeah, she's here. Okay, Julia, this is a lot of your questions all grouped together. First one, how do we know when to use her honorifics in Krishna consciousness, and what do they all mean? Also, how does one get these titles like His Holiness, His Grace, Prabhu, Devi Dasi, Swami, Das, Srila, etc.? Shall I read all these, David?
Yeah.
Okay.
Read them.
Why do people bow down as they enter or leave holy places? Can anyone bow down? What the intention behind this? At temples, why do some people ring the bell? Can we offer prasad without an altar or without knowing Sanskrit? If so, how? If not, how do I learn these prayers and protocols? Why is Tulsi sacred? When there's no forum like this, where do we go to ask these questions?
Okay. Thank you, Julia. Thanks for the questions. They're of a very practical nature. As I've discussed earlier, and maybe you've noticed the past hour, like I really love to answer practical and philosophical questions about Krishna consciousness. I'm joyful in that process. So I said, yeah. So I'm available. Maria Glishin's available. Most days, like a big part of what I do is like respond to email questions about the philosophy and practice of Krishna consciousness. So I welcome you to write to me. I know the same is true from Mother Malini, like that. Yeah. All right. So Tulasi is a pure devotee of Krishna. Like we say, we just talked about Srila Prabhupada. He's a pure devotee. Tulasi is a pure devotee of Krishna in the form of a plant. Just a connection I've heard, like Tulasi is the same species as the basil. And I know in the Bible, it's called the holy basil. So there's something holy about that plant. Mm-hmm. So there's a story about the pastimes of Tulasi Devi. I'm not going to get into the story, but she's a pure devotee of Krishna in the form of a plant. And that's why serving Tulasi Devi, circumambulating, there's mantras where we glorify Tulasi. She's a pure devotee, just like Prabhupada or Jesus. Vrindaye Tulasi Devai Priye Kesavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Pada Devi Satyavati Namo Namaha Vrindaye Tulasi. So there's many mantras if we want to absorb ourselves in the celebration. She's a female personality. She also has a female human-like form, and Tulasi is her plant form. Okay, and there's more to be said, but that's the essence. And okay, as far as honorifics, so okay, at temples, why do some people ring the bell? My understanding is just like, okay, let's say if someone's in a room, before you go in the room, it's polite to kind of knock, right? Right? And just barge in. Whoa. Oh, we don't need, right? So we're going to the temple. It's the space of Krishna. It's the room of God, space of Srimati Radharani. So the idea, we're gentle persons. So we either knock on the door or ring a bell, okay, rather than just kind of barge in. That's the principle as I understand it. As far as bowing down, again, it's for our purification. It's for my purification. Like I have tendency towards arrogance, obnoxious, and so we're bowing down to God and God's pure devotee. Like, yeah, I put myself under. You know, I put myself under at your feet. I'm humbling myself. I'm your servant. I'm your servant. How can I serve you? And that's the attitude I want to cultivate, a service attitude in relation to Krishna and Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya. And so, yes. So nothing in Krishna consciousness is meant to be like some dry, empty ritual. So I know where it's going. I have to offer obeisances. Like, I don't want to be in that mentality. When I'm conscious, I'm offering obeisances to Prabhupada. When I offer obeisances, bowing down, I say Prabhupada's 2 pranam mantras. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. And when I'm conscious, it's transformation. There's nothing's meant to be ritualistic. It's transformative. Yeah, and that's why I love these intelligent, sincere questions. Why are we doing it? So I bow down several times per day to Srila Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya, Lord Nityananda, the 6 Goswamis, Srimati Radharani. And if I'm doing it with consciousness, then I get who I am is not this kind of like false ego, David Wolf character. Like, I connect with some soft-heartedness. I'm a servant of Krishna. Wonderful, very wonderful. Okay, and as far as the honorifics, okay, Prabhu is essentially, it's like, Prabhu is like Prabhu or Prabhavi. It's like the Sanskrit version of Mr. or Miss or Mrs. It means master. Okay, so like everyone, like your Bhakti Julia Prabhu, Anasuya Prabhu, Lakshmi Priya Prabhu. Okay, Parampara Prabhu, Gajendra Prabhu. Okay, so it's like the Sanskrit equivalent, Mr. Mrs. That means master. So sign of respect. His Grace, same thing. Like, yeah, like if I'm officially writing a letter, again, like we get to decide how formal we want to be, but it could be like to Her Grace, Lakshmi Priya Devi Dasi Prabhu, like that. Okay. And then Prabhupada is His Divine Grace. So it's like, okay. All right. Holiness, that's used for when someone takes the sannyas ashram, when someone takes like an official ashram of renunciation, which I'll say Prabhupada did not make that particularly important. Even in 1977, shortly before he departed, he kind of advised, don't take sannyas ashram anymore. Like, he could say it wasn't going well. I don't regard that as like absolute for the next thousands of years. No one should ever officially take sannyas. Some people do say that's what Prabhupada said. I don't see it that way, but he cautioned against it. So holiness is for sannyasis. Devi, yeah. So das means servant, and the female form of that is dasi. Okay, so like my spiritually initiated name, Dhira Govinda Das. So Govinda is a name for Krishna, one who gives satisfaction to the cows, the earth, and in the senses. And Dhira means one who is not disturbed by the material energy, one who's not disturbed by the disturbances of this world. So that's a name for Krishna, right? Dhira Govinda. Krishna is Govinda, and he's not influenced by the material energy. So I'm not Dhira Govinda. I'm Dhira Govinda Das.
Mm.
I'm a servant of Krishna Govinda,
Mm.
who's not disturbed by the material energy. Right? Okay, and so we have like Anasuya. Anasuya is great devotee from Bhagavatam. Anasuya means it means one who is non-envious. So you're Anasuya Devi Dasi, a servant of this great devotee Anasuya, a servant of the non-envious devotees, like that. So Dasi is the feminine form. Swami is like His Holiness. Swami is also one who officially goes to the sannyas ashram, which again Prabhupada didn't so much recommend. Shri means beautiful or opulent, like that. So sometimes we'll hear like Srimati Devi, Srimad, like that. So it's another time. It's a sign of honor, appreciating the beauty of someone. So Srila is a form of that. Srimati is a form of that. Let's see about as far as, can we offer prasad without an altar or without knowing Sanskrit? If so, how? If not, how do I learn these prayers and protocols? Yeah, I mean, in one sense, technically we offer bhoga. Bhoga means the food that's enjoyed. So Krishna, he enjoys bhoga, and then we honor his prasadam. Prasadam means mercy. So it's not dependent on any language. It's dependent on that before we have food, we don't need it. We offer it with love and devotion to Krishna through his pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada. So it's not dependent on any particular prayers. At the same time, a way we can show devotion is to learn these mantras, It can be a simple offering, like we offer the food without having tasted it first. We offer the food with 3 Hare Krishna Maha Mantras. At the same time, it's kind of like if we don't go through the process, because we don't know the process, and we just with love and devotion, Krishna, please accept this apple. That's wonderful. We're not just remembering God, but we're offering the food for God's enjoyment, and then we take the remnants. That's called prasad. At the same time, if it's just out of some like laziness or envious or arrogant attitude, oh, I'm not going to spend it. Then it's nice to go through the process, because there's special potency in the process. And we don't need an altar. We can offer to a picture of Krishna in our mind with love and devotion. We can do it that way. At the same time, Krishna is giving us just like we shared earlier, we can chant the Maha Mantra whenever we feel and sing it whenever we feel. It's fine. At the same time, if in addition to do it when we're inspired, and I have a vow, at least 5 rounds per day, at least 16 rounds per day, at least 25 rounds per day. Okay, all right, then we do it with a vow of determination. Then like each day we're making progress out of the miserable material energy. So similarly, Krishna gives us a process to help us feel more heartfelt devotion. And the process involves, say, it could be a simple altar with maybe Krishna, maybe Radha Krishna and Srila Prabhupada. It could be more of the divine personalities like the Panchatattva, the 6 Goswamis, the Parampara. And then, offering with love and devotion, not depend on any language. At the same time, a way to show our love and devotion is, I'm going to learn these mantras. It's a way to show our love and devotion. It's not like our love and devotion is dependent on that, but why not learn the mantras? Again, you're welcome to write to me or give me a call. I'll send you an email, write to Anasuya or Lakshmi Priya, write to Mother Malini, Marie Glishine to learn them. Thanks for the questions.
Hey, Krishna. So Julia, you have a couple more questions that David wanted to answer together. And they are, how do gurus choose names when initiating devotees? And why do some people who are not initiated still have Krishna conscious names? Thank you for your questions.
Yeah, thanks again, Julia. Okay, so Srila Prabhupada, and again, he's my guru, he's my spiritual master, he's my caring and direct link to Krishna, to Krishna's disciplic succession. And Prabhupada established a system where he's the initiating guru, and he has no physical interface in the ordinary sense with the disciples. Prabhupada, his disappearance pastime occurred on November 14th, 1977. And before November 14th, 1977, Prabhupada established a system, philosophically and by his personal example, where he initiated hundreds, even thousands of disciples, essentially informally, without those disciples ever seeing him in the ordinary sense, ever having a phone call with him, ever receiving a letter from him. Srila Prabhupada did not select their name. Srila Prabhupada did not chant on their initiation beads. Srila Prabhupada did not conduct their initiation ceremony. Prabhupada arranged all that through his authorized representatives. And so, just like any other service, right? Just like we could say, we talked about offering prasad. Or like, okay, how do I do the service of offering prasad? How do I do the service of leading a kirtan? How do I do the service of distributing books, of opening a center for Bhakti yoga? And so Prabhupada's doing all those services through his authorized representatives. He's doing all those services, right? Just like right now, my intention is that I'm representing Prabhupada. My intention is to be a bona fide authorized representative of Prabhupada. So I'm assisting Prabhupada to spread Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada, so similarly with choosing a name, right? So just like with any service, just like answering these questions, or let's say if we're preparing food for Krishna, or if we're leading a kirtan, or if we're talking to someone to explain the philosophy. So we pray to Prabhupada, we pray to Krishna to do the service as an authorized representative of our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. So it's the same, so that if it's my service to be the instrument, the vehicle through which a name, through me and some others, through which a name is revealed, then I pray to Prabhupada, I pray to Super Soul in the heart, I pray to Krishna to do that service with purity, to not let any material ego get in the way. So just like any service. So Prabhupada authorizes his representatives to do that service on his behalf, with Prabhupada as the spiritual master. Now, why do some people are non-initiated still have Krishna conscious names? Well, I know it's particular instances. I mean, like my son and daughter, they're not formally initiated. They're deeply initiated in the essential sense, and so we gave them Krishna conscious names, Sita and Abhimanyu. Okay, so they were born to parents who were into Krishna conscious names. That's one scenario. Otherwise, someone who's not formally initiated, they can choose, here's what I want to be called. And it could be a Sanskrit name from the Bhagavad Gita or from Srimad Bhagavatam. They can do that for whatever reasons they have. They can do that. Gets into should they do it? And, there can be different opinions. But, so someone who's not formally initiated, say, well, I didn't want to get formally initiated, but I just came up with this name that I like, and that's what I want to be called. People can do that. Thanks for your questions.
Next question, we're going back to Valerie. This question is, I feel shameful because I don't know where to look in the Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam for specific guidance in my life. I feel like I want a list, a personal guide to help me navigate life, a place to go when I know I'm screwing up. I feel like I know some of the things the Bible says about what to do and what not to do. And I was taught to pray to God for forgiveness. But the Bhagavad Gita is more overwhelming and I don't know it well enough to find the answers. I feel like things I don't know keep stacking up against me. How can I take on so much knowledge from that vast amount of reading?
Thank you, Valerie. Thanks for your sincere question. I'm reminded of a text in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text 10. And Krishna says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. Krishna says, for one who's sincere, I give the intelligence by which they can come to me. So he's not saying, for one who's memorized 1,000 verses. Of course, again, a way we might show our devotion to Krishna is, let me read like that. So if we're sincere, Krishna will guide us. We shared earlier, like, oh yeah, I just lost control of my anger. It wasn't godly. It wasn't even good. It was actually kind of nasty. All right, so let me sincerely learn from this to become a better person. Let me pray to Krishna for that. So, okay, and so if we're sincere, we get that guidance, and there's no replacement for steadily reading Prabhupada's books. Just like, it's just that without feeling overwhelmed, there's no reason to feel overwhelmed. It's just like, okay, all right, I'm gonna read Bhagavad Gita 15 minutes a day, 4 days a week, 2 hours a day for the next month. I'm doing a super marathon. I'm going to read, and then I'm going to read Ishopanishad, and then whatever. I'm on a program where, in 15 years, I'll have read all of Prabhupada's books at least once. And so like if someone's 30 years old, oh, okay. So when I'm 75, I'll have read all of Prabhupada's books 3 times. And I'll be like a sage and a scholar in the books. Okay. Hearing Prabhupada's, there's no replacement. It's just like, and then, gosh, and it's not essentially about, I know for me, the reading, sure, it's intellectually, philosophically rich. For me, it's associating with Prabhupada. And it's just like chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. It's a service to Prabhupada, it's a service to Krishna. So read Prabhupada's books. Yeah, that's right. Overwhelmed. There's just like, so Prabhupada has, I regard he has 54 major books. So just like, okay, I'm going to read 1 page a day. Make a commitment, make a vow. Well, I don't have time because, we all have 24 hours. And so it's like, how much is serving Prabhupada and how much is cultivating Krishna consciousness important to it? And I'm saying, it should be important. I'm just saying, like, if we want to advance in, not just intellectually, or even just philosophically, if we want to progress in realization of these principles, the actual transformation of heart, the actual joy of the process, means we give time. We give time to the relationship. And if we do, then we'll experience the effects. If we don't, then we'll probably stay lost in material darkness and be controlled by anger, lust, greed, and envy. So, and I know for me, like, it's because often my mind wants to do this and that, but whenever I give time to read Prabhupada's books, I don't want to. I'd rather read this. I'd rather sit. I give time to Prabhupada's books. I'm always, always, always fulfilled and satisfied that I did that. Hear Prabhupada's recording. I mentioned I had on a 45-minute drive here. I heard a Prabhupada recording. I got. And he talked about topics that, I've heard thousands of times for 40 years or more. And I got new realizations, fresh realizations about my life and my relationship with my mind, my time management, just in these past 45 minutes from Prabhupada. So there's no replacement for that. And also seek shelter, take guidance from those who are senior to you in following Prabhupada. Take guidance in those who are senior to you, while cultivating your personal relationship with Prabhupada. Follow his guidance, chant Hare Krishna, read his books. Thanks for your question.
Our next question is from Julia. How do people usually memorize prayers in Sanskrit? How do I learn to sing and speak Sanskrit with the correct measures and tone? I'm actually very interested in this question as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm not the one who can give you a good answer.
Okay.
Well,
I wanted Avi to teach me. That's what was my answer.
Avi's good.
Yes.
Yeah, Avi's my son, for those who are not aware. I'm seeing Bhakti and Amanda's here. Yeah, it was just she was Bhakti managed was staying at my home just about a week ago, and one evening we just like, okay, let's open Bhagavad Gita, and we learned a verse. Dehinosmi nitadehe komaram yoganam jira tatadehantira prapti dirastachana muyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. The self-realized person is not bewildered by such a change. So a year or two ago, I did similar with Kelly. You need to be careful if you stay at my home. You might get trapped into like learning verses. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for the mind, right? Oh, so I'm no expert. I get a lot of fulfillment from learning the Sanskrit verses. One thing I'll say, again, to develop love of Krishna, to purify your heart, it's not required, to have the correct Sanskrit tone and to memorize. At the same time, it's a way, just like chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra with a vow, consuming only prasadam, learning the prasadam process. It's like, this week I'm going to learn a verse. By the end of 2023, I'll have 10 verses memorized from Bhagavad Gita along with the prasadam mantras. It's a way to show our devotion to Prabhupada and Krishna. And so, I have my method. I'm not like, any expert in memorization, but like most verses have 4 lines, not all. Many of the verses, each line is 8 syllables. Some have 11, 12, some have 14, some have 19. So there's variation. Gets into a whole thing. Honestly, you mentioned Abhi. Yeah, by the time he was 14, Abhi was doing all these verses that even Dad didn't know. How dare he? How dare he? Yeah. So I'll typically like learn one line until I can say it 3 times by memory. Then I'll go to the second line and then the second line 3 times. Then lines 1 and 2 3 times without looking. Then just the third line 3 times. Then 1, 2, and 3 3 times. Then just the 4th line. Then all 4 3 times by memory. And then the English. And the English usually also has 4 parts. So I learned the English and then Sanskrit and English 3 times from memory. Okay. Then there's learning, then there's retaining. And a lot of the verses I've learned, I've forgotten. And I have no regrets, because whatever 15, 20, 25 minutes I spent learning that verse in 1986 or 1994, that is a perfect use of time to absorb myself in those vibrations. So then I'll be like, okay, maybe for the next week before I take rest at night, I'll recite it at least 3 times, or at least twice a day for the next month. And Prabhupada would say, when you use a verse in your preaching, in your sharing, then it sticks with you. When you use it a few times, I've experienced the truth of that. As far as correct measure and tone, I suggest listen to Prabhupada. There are also other experts. If someone just came on, if you could put yourself on mute. Thank you. I'm not an expert in the tone. No, actually, the correct way to pronounce Sanskrit is with a Philadelphia accent. So you need to. So I'm no expert in that. There's different courses in the exact. Listen to Prabhupada. He's got it perfect. So listen to Prabhupada, and then we get that. And there are courses one can take, or just how to get trained in the proper Sanskrit. And I'm not. I haven't gotten trained in it. Thanks for your question.
All right, hi again. Next questions are from Rachel and Julia also. What does Prabhupada say about homosexuality? What are Prabhupada's thoughts around sex, gender, and marriage? Do the Vedas have thoughts about gender roles? Those are Rachel's questions. And Julia asked, how can people with non-traditional identities, gender, queer, non-binary, trans, etc., show up with respect and be met with respect in commonly more traditional spaces? I've noticed that sometimes the men and women are split up for various activities at temples. I'm unsure of what to do.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. Thanks for your questions, Julia and Rachel. Okay. So, some basic, so we're, that we're not these vehicles, right? We're the driver of the car. We're not the car. Okay, we're the driver of the car. We're not the car. And so Krishna consciousness is about realizing who we are as the driver and not the car, and what's the natural function of the driver in the fully realized state, to serve Krishna with love and devotion. So we're not the car, okay? And it doesn't mean the car is not important. Just like if we're driving the car, I wouldn't know, am I in a Mack truck? Am I in a mini compact? If I depress the accelerator 1 inch, does it go quick to 0 to 60, or does it hardly move? I want to know the car, while not getting bewildered thinking I am the car. So just like, okay, so there's different cars, and like some cars have this advantages, some cars that advantages, some cars are this color, some cars are that color, and some cars are good on gas mileage, like that. All right, so similarly, so just like we have our psychophysical nature, and our, each of us, like, I'm attracted to this kind of taste. I have this sexual orientation. I like blue, I like red. Some are taller, some are shorter, some have like amazing mathematical intelligence, some has special emotional intelligence. Right? We have our psychophysical natures, and that's not who we are. We're the spirit soul. We're the spirit soul. And so Prabhupada, he's giving us a process that, okay, whatever type of vehicle we're in, practice this process and realize who we are as spirit souls. And so it's truly universal, whatever the preference, the orientation, the race, the creed, the economic status attached to the body, the education level, whatever practice process, and the soul realizes itself in its full joy and service to God. That's the process. So that's truly non-sectarian, like that. And at the same time, as we said, it's important to know the car, and so that relates to some of the questions here. So it's not about stereotyping, but okay, we can see like in okay, let's say for example, a spirit soul inside a male human body. Okay, so let's say there's a room of 5-year-olds. So we can say spirit souls in a male human body can deal and manage with them just as well as spirit souls in a female human body. Wrong. Okay. On average, most spirit souls in the female human body are just going to be more effective with the 5-year-olds than most spirit souls in the male human body. Okay. Now, but we don't want to be prejudiced or discriminate. Like everyone has free opportunity. So let's say there's a spirit soul in a male human body who's especially adept and talented at serving and being with, taking care of 5-year-olds. He shouldn't be prevented. Still on average. So that's like an example. No, we're cultivating who we are as a driver of the car. At the same time, certain types of vehicles tend to have this this propensity, and some have less of that propensity, like that. So that's as far as so like marriage, so like there's the natural sex urge. We talked earlier, like Bhakti yoga, it's very world embracing. It's not world rejecting. It's world embracing. So sex desires, let's say, so in marriage, then it's just like, I mean, this can be a whole nuanced topic, but like, okay, got one person focused in, and I'm committed, and now I know, oh, this one's attracted to me. Should I go there? Will this one be better? The marriage is like, it helps the mind be peaceful. And let's say man and a woman, they said, let's use our sex urge to have children and raise them in spiritual life and Krishna consciousness. Then that sex urge is purified. It's used Krishna says, Dharma Vivito Bhuteshu, Dharma Vivito Kamosmi Bharatarshva. He says, sex that's engaged in for truly godly purposes. Krishna says he is non-different from such sexual energy. Right? So sex is not rejected. So that's a way to dovetail the sexual propensity in Krishna consciousness. And then the whole thing of marriage is just like that way. It's just focus on one, and then and then we can be peaceful and do our spiritual life. Other than like, oh, but I want to enjoy with this one. It's not like, let me focus on one for this lifetime. So it's, it can be a very helpful structure. And gender roles, again, like, everyone's encouraged to serve Krishna according to their propensities and their qualities, whatever the type of psychophysical, whatever type of the vehicle. All right. And then we find like again, and we gave the example of like, if there's spirit soul in a male body who's particularly adept at caring for 5-year-olds, he shouldn't be prevented from it. But generally speaking, it's going to be more suitable for spirit souls in female bodies. Yeah. And then so like spirit souls, gender roles, like the main thing like about spirit souls and female bodies is to respect and protect. Respect and protect. And then spirit souls in female bodies, they're respected, they're protected, and they naturally thrive and blossom and contribute to community and society on all dimensions: emotional, physical, intellectual, spiritual, nurturing in all dimensions, in the container of experiencing respect and protection. So there's more to that, but I'll pause there. Oh, okay. Sometimes the men and women are split up for various activities at temples. I'm unsure what to do. I don't know what you should do either, Joy. Well, I think here in our Safetov communities, we don't do that. We don't do that. So it's like, it's just, and I'm not saying that the temple shouldn't do it. I'm not saying that, but we don't really do that, So it's not a thing here. But the basic idea is that, like, okay, the basic idea, and I don't want to overgeneralize, like, okay, that if the men are mixed with women, then rather than thinking about the kirtan or the deities, they'll be looking at each other, trying to get each other's attention. So to prevent that, there's some separation. Again, we're not, and so I see the purpose of it. We don't really do that here. And I understand, Julia, that like you might go to some places where they have the separation. What do you do? Like, you're not sure where you, so that could be maybe a topic for a coaching session or something. But that's why they do that separation. It's clearly not required, but I can see where it can be helpful sometimes. Okay, thank you.
All right. We have another set of questions that came from Julia and Payal and an anonymous person. So Julia asks, where do all the rules in Krishna consciousness come from? Payal says, how can I figure out what my service for Krishna is outside of taking care of myself and my family? And the anonymous question is, how much room is there on the Bhakti path for creativity? I've noticed that I can lose some aspects of myself when I'm on a structured spiritual life.
Okay. Thanks for the questions, anonymous, Julia and Payal. Thank you. Yeah, in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna uses the term regulated principles of freedom. So the purpose of the regulations, the principles, is not to be repressive or oppressive or stifled, just the opposite. We've already given some examples over the past hour and a half or so. Okay. And so that's our responsibility, our opportunity to relate to the regulations in a way where we're enthusiastic. Okay. We're enthusiastic. So just like, again, a few hours ago, I drove from Alachua, Florida to Melrose, Florida. Right. So I could say it's so stifling. I have to drive on the right side of the road and stop at red because I'm free, because I'm my own person. I'm independent. For me, red will mean go very fast because I'm my own man. And today I'm gonna play like it's England. I'll drive on the left side. So we understand that that so-called freedom will curtail my freedom in a prison or with debt or a hospital or a morgue. So no, actually, I appreciate these rules of the road. They free me to achieve my destination. So, it's helpful to keep the why in mind, to keep the goal in mind, right? Yeah. Again, we gave that example. I want to become a concert level pianist. I want to become a tournament level tennis player. So it means like my mind might not always want to get up early and do those 4 hours per day of practicing forehands or practicing the harmonies and the chords, but I keep the goal in mind. And then, wow, like each month I'm progressing. So we keep the goal, we keep the goal. And then, so it's not like I'm so inspired every mantra I chant. I'm not, but I am inspired every day to fulfill my commitment to chant at least 16 rounds and to read Prabhupada's books and to sing Nrsimha prayers. And because I'm inspired to fulfill that commitment, to follow those rules, then more and more each month, each year of my life, I do have those moments of inspiration and super soul connection and ecstasy when chanting. And so, so the purpose of guidelines isn't for stifling. It's to free us to achieve our goal. It's to free the soul, to free the soul. And then it's so, there's the analogy in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita about like the horses and the reins. So if we're pulling the reins too tight, we're pulling the reins like, I'm following so many rules and regulations, and it's feeling like I have to. All right. Now, to progress in Krishna consciousness, Tapo divyam putrakayena sattvam shuddhya jasmad brahmasakyam tranantam. Some discipline is required, meaning my mind and senses don't feel like it, I'm going to do it anyway. We gave examples like playing piano, learning tennis, getting a degree in physics or anything. At the same time, maybe there is some time to let the reins a little loose. Okay. Maybe for a few days I won't get up at 3:30 a.m. Let me sleep in a bit, okay? Because the reins are too tight. Let me have those few extra slices of pizza. Come on, okay? So, and that's our responsibility at each junction of life to know how tightly because if we let the reins too loose in the name of free, then we become dull-minded. There's not enough rigorous discipline to be sharp and alive and crisply advancing. And if we pull the reins too tight, so we want to be on that growth edge. And what that growth edge looks like at one stage of life might look differently at the next stage of life. So in the name of not pulling the reins too tight, if we get too complacent and we're not sufficiently rigorous in our spiritual practices, progress will be very, very slow. And then, so the rules, that's the thing. There's one, Prabhupada was in Australia pretty early in the movement, maybe early 70s. And the devotees there were really new. Like, of course, Prabhupada started the movement in the West, 1966, New York, or even 1965, Butler, Pennsylvania. But, the Australia devotees, they were just like a few months there, and Prabhupada showed them some deity worship. And Prabhupada knew they weren't ready for it, but with Krishna's mercy, Prabhupada engaged them in deity worship. And the devotees were like, there's a lot of rules to remember. And Prabhupada said, if I told you all the rules and regulations, you would faint. So the idea is to niyamagraha, not to get bogged down in rules and regulations. At the same time, not to neglect rules and regulations that'll help us progress on the path, progress in purifying our heart. So that's the balance. So there are so many rules and regulations in the Vedas, the thousands and thousands. I was just talking to someone in the religious Jews, the Old Testament, we think of the 10 Commandments. Do you know that really there are 613 commandments? There are 613. something like about 200 of them aren't relevant now till the new temple is established and the Messiah comes. But the religious Jews, they're following like 400 some commandments. Okay. Yeah. So basically, what guidelines are particularly potent and important for us to follow? We get that from our current link to the Pram Prashu with Prabhupada. Otherwise, yeah, I could read Nectar of Devotion. I could read Bhagavad. I could read the Padma Purana. And am I supposed to offer 1,000 obeisances per day? Am I supposed to what like that? So the ones that are particularly important for us, like commitment to rounds per day, the mornings songs, Gurvastakam, the how to offer prasad. We get that from our current link. Let's see, he's especially empowered to guide us. Srila Prabhupada.
Like the number of rounds of japa, devotees first said that 64
See?
rounds. What? So Prabhupada adjusted to 16.
16. Yeah, that's it. And yeah, because at first Prabhupada was like, yeah, okay, for like, serious, like at least 64 rounds per day. So his father was like, no way, no. So Prabhupada was like, all right, 32. They came back. That's not going to work. So then he said, all right, the standard, like to be initiated, 16, not going below that. Okay. And again, if someone chants one Maha Mantra per day, it's wonderful. It's not all or nothing. But Prabhupada's saying, here are some basic foundational guidelines that if you want to like each day make progress out of drowning it in the ocean of material existence into the joy of Krishna consciousness, here's a minimum. What else? Yeah. As far as service, yeah, that's like, for me, that relates a lot to, like, here's the thing, and some of you may have experienced this. If we're sincere that we want to serve, we need to be really careful, because Prabhupada, Super and Soul, and Krishna they'll reveal like, okay, here's 72 hours service per day. Ready? Ready? Okay. Here's service. You'll need a minimum of 20 days a week. Ready? Go. So here's if we're and of course the basic service is the chanting. The chanting and the hearing. That's the foundation. We chant and hear. Morning program, chant japa, especially we come to 16 rounds per day. We're regularly reading Prabhupada's books, and we're doing it with the speed. Because again, the Maha Mantra, it's a prayer and it's the answer to the prayer. And if our prayer is, please engage me in your service, Prabhupada and Krishna are ready to show us how to be engaged 24 hours per day. Prabhupada would sometimes say, when he would go to take rest, he would say, now I'm going to waste time. Now, of course, Prabhupada's resting. That's why I'm not using the word sleeping, because my sleep is just ignorance. But his resting, he's resting his body to use it in Krishna's service. In his dreams, he's absorbed in serving the mission of his spiritual master. So it's not wasting time, but in his humility. So if we're sincere about service, then yeah, I want to decrease my sleeping and eating, and I want to decrease my wasteful internet time, because there's so much service to do. Prabhupada has so much service to do for his mission. And if we're sincere, either in some way, maybe through his representatives, it'll be revealed. We can just like, okay, I'll host 5 home programs per week. There you go. Anyone could do that. Okay, 1 per month. There's unlimited service to do for Krishna's movement. Okay, thanks for your question.
Okay, our next question is another anonymous person. How can I experience both the Sattvic Bhakti lifestyle and at the same time be in a successful romantic relationship when my partner is not practicing Bhakti?
You know how to put people on mute? See, not everyone's on mute here.
Okay.
I think Rukmini is not on mute.
Are we able to do that?
There she goes.
Thank you,
Good,
Rukmini.
thank you.
I appreciate
Yeah, thanks for your question, anonymous. Here's the thing. Savai pum samparo dharma yato bhakti hokshaje. I took your pritya yatma supersedati. That's text 6 of the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And basically what Sutta Goswami is saying there, he's a great pure devotee of Krishna, he's saying, there's no obstacles to Krishna consciousness, right? Like if we want to practice bhakti, maybe it's nice that those who are under the same roof, it's very nice that they're supportive and they're practicing. It's very nice. But if that's not the situation, well, one thing, we get to take a look. How come I created that situation? Not bad. Maybe I chose to create. But whatever the situation, nothing can get in the way of bhakti if we're sincere. No material. When we're sincere, I want to do Krishna. I want to engage in devotional service. No material obstacle can get in the way. And then if we're in that, we've created that situation. Successful romantic relationship with a partner not practicing bhakti, that we get to, as Gandhi said, we get to be the change we want to see. So we get to live the principles of a devotional heart, patience, humility, assertiveness, establishing our boundaries, being clear in our boundaries, communicating powerfully and respectfully. And we be the principles. And then that might be just kind of like whoever we're living with, like, I want some of that. Wow, I'd like to be a master of my anger rather than a slave of my anger. I'd like to have the joy I experience in you. And then maybe the partner is like, what's this process you're doing? I want some of that stuff. And whether they do or not, wherever they're at, however supportive or not supportive, practicing or not supporting, to the extent that we're sincere, nothing can get in the way. At the same time, we get to take a look at what's the surroundings, what's the relationships I'm surrounding myself with, and how satisfied am I with that? Thank you for the question.
Okay, so we have another anonymous question. I feel very connected to the divine feminine. How can I combine and connect that fulfilling feminine relationship with my bhakti practice?
Well, thanks for your question. For me, that seems, in a sense, kind of, well, the words come in natural and easy. Yeah. In the philosophy of bhakti, philosophically, we're all female. We're all female philosophically. We're all prakriti. Means in one sense, I'll say for those beings who are inclined more to those qualities that are regarded as feminine, rather than those qualities generally regarded as masculine, bhakti is easier, because bhakti is about it's about surrendering to a person with heartfelt, unconditional love. That's more associated with the feminine energy, right? Bhakti is about receiving transcendental knowledge, and it's about receiving and serving with heart. So I know it seems to me like those with more of a propensity towards the feminine type of qualities, there's a lot of advantages to immerse oneself in bhakti compared to those maybe more associating with the qualities generally regarded as masculine. So that's what I'll say on that one.
Our next question is from Julia again. Are Krishna consciousness and Christianity related? Related, not elated.
Yep.
And how? And why do they sound so similar?
Sure. Well, yeah, I'm not saying I'm like any sort of scholar or expert in Christianity, but I do know the essence of Jesus's teachings and his life is bhakti. That's it. Sometimes we say, like you might say just like we have our Hare Krishna Maha Mantra from the ancient eternal Vedas. You might say the Maha Mantra, the most important mantra from the Old Testament, the Hebrew. And I say that because I think we can safely conjecture that Jesus was chanting this. He was a rabbi. He was chanting this incessantly. It translates as, love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your might. That's bhakti. Okay. The essence of Christianity or Judaism it's not be good and go to heaven. I mean, it's better to be good than to be nasty and evil. But the essence is love God with pure devotion. And then you're pleasing God. That's the goal of life. And then we're experiencing something much more joyful than heaven while we're in this body. We're experiencing love of God. And we don't need to wait till this body dies. It's better than heaven. That gets into the whole cosmology. Because in the Veda cosmology, there is hellish planets, earthly planets, heavenly planets, and above the heavenly planets, there's the Vaikuntha planets of pure devotion. And we get to experience Vaikuntha in this very body. And so if we look at the essence of the teachings, Christianity, Judaism, even Buddhism, it's similar, even practically completely parallel with Bhakti, with Krishna consciousness. We can go, that could be a whole course, but we'll stop there for now.
Okay, we have a question from Julia. Can you explain any rules about Tulsi Mala? Explain why Tulsi necklaces are sometimes one row, sometimes two or more, and why is Tulsi sacred?
Thank you. We spoke earlier in the discussion that Tulsi is a pure devotee of Krishna in the body of a plant. So the Tulsi wood is sacred. So the Tulsi Mala, the chanting, some chanting beads are made of other types of wood. The wood's not so important, same time Tulsi. So it's generally recommended, because we use these for sacred purposes, generally recommended, that's why we hold the beads in a bag, not to let the beads touch the floor, not to let the beads touch our feet. I don't take the beads into the bathroom with me. So those are some like that, not to let the bead touch the garbage. And wire Tulsi, sometimes one, sometimes two. I'm not good at this stuff. I think before initiation it's one, after initiation it's three. So that's what I've heard. And I think there's something like that from Prabhupada. I think basically before initiation one, after initiation three. And it's a good question, like, because like if someone's not at all following principles, it's better they don't wear Tulasi beads. Like we wouldn't so much want someone like to be wearing Tulsi beads and they're just like on the street corner, like smoking and drinking. It's actually, there should be at least some minimum standard for someone to display Tulsi beads. Thanks for the question.
Okay, our next question is from Anandini. On Thursday next week, my daughter eats lunch at school. They're having a pizza party. I volunteered to go and help clean up, and now I'm thinking that I will perhaps need to wash plates that have leftovers from the pizza on it, possibly with meat. Is that also contributing to meat eating when we clean up plates that had meat on them? It's a technical question. I'm going to do all I can to avoid washing dishes. I just thought just the thought of it makes me feel sick to my stomach. There's a second question here from Radhika. What's the best way to handle eating or preparing food in a kitchen that's not veg friendly? If we stay somewhere while traveling that allows meat in their kitchen, I'm unsure of what karma comes from using that kitchen for my own food prep.
Thanks for the questions, Radhika and Anandini. Thank you. Yes. So the answer is, generally speaking, yeah, like if we're washing dishes with meat like that, we are incurring karma. We are contributing to the pain of the animals. Okay, so the answer is yes, with that. But it's not an absolute yes. For example, Srila Prabhupada, when he first came to the United States, he was in Butler, Pennsylvania, before he traveled through Philadelphia and went to New York. And he stayed at the Agarwal residence. And in the refrigerator, they had meat. And Prabhupada was keeping the boga that he would prepare to offer to Krishna in the same refrigerator that had meat. And I venture to say red meat. So that's very not the standard. Okay. So the point is, like, Prabhupada's not incurring karma because he was completely fixed on the mission, and it was, let's say, a compromise that he was making in his service to Krishna. And so he made that compromise, and the family, there's videos where the family, Sally would say, it's like, and then he would cook his own, and then we could see like, this smells especially delicious. And so then he started cooking for the whole family. So if it's truly in service, and not just because, well, I don't want people to think this of me, and I want to fit into the crowd. If we're intensely engaged in service and there's some compromise, okay, then we're not incurring karma or like that. But if there is any material motivation, we need to be careful. Now, as far as, and you might know more about this than me, Lakshmi Purana Suya, but like, if there's kitchens there's ways to purify the kitchens, wash them in a certain way, do our best to not get in such a compromised situation. I gave the example of Prabhupada. It was his service, and so there's no compromise there. So there are ways to purify the kitchen. Wash the pots, bring your own pots, like that. And so if we're giving our sincere effort and it's in Krishna service, then we're not incurring karma. If we get any material tinge of desire for adoration, distinction, to belong. On Dini's question, I remember back when I worked for the state of Florida Children's Medical Services. I worked for them from 95 till 2003. And they would have this annual, they would go to there's some car races in Gainesville. There's a racetrack, and they would have booths, and they do a fundraiser. And it would be like on a Saturday, and we would volunteer. And they would sell stuff that's not offerable to Krishna. And everyone would have their volunteer assignments. But then I remember they would say, oh, David, you're vegetarian, so we won't ask you to sell. Not that I would have if they asked me, but so I've been in such situations like that. Thanks for your questions. All right, I think we're a little past date. I know we got to like a lot of the questions. We didn't get to all. I welcome anyone. If we didn't get to your questions or other questions, you can write to me, write to Marie Glasheen. We love to answer these questions. And if you want to do this quarterly, I'm into it. Hare Krishna.
Thanks, everybody. Hare Krishna. Good night. Thank you for joining us, for all the great questions. And I got even more questions today that may make it on the list. So please feel free to send your questions to Dear Govinda to us. Thank you and good night.
Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Kelly, Hare Krishna, Kelly. Hare Bol.
Jim Wood says, which part of the Bhagavatam? I'm not sure what he was referring to. And Valerie commented that overwhelmed quotations is exactly what she's feeling. Thank you for your answer. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.